How's it going, everybody? Sessiion here. Welcome to Final Fantasy XIV, and just wanted to demonstrate a kind of a controller setup with hotbars in terms of how I have it set for Paladin. This, of course, also includes the rework for Paladin that was introduced in patch 6.3, and so hopefully this will kind of give you a bit of a showcase of what the hotbar could be set up, and not that it's supposed to be like a prime definition example of how like the best way to make the hotbar setup for Paladin, but this is more so for my own sense of comfort personally and how I'd like to just use the class now that we've had that rework come into place. And also kind of going through a bit of history with it too, because you know, this class has seen quite the rework in comparison, and that's going to really showcase a bit of it too. So of course, similar to Gunbreaker, I think I mentioned that also even during my Gunbreaker video, that you know, Paladin's rework, the classes feel a little bit more similar to each other now, which I actually really enjoy, and so it was really easy for me to figure out that the classes have that similarity now. But what was difficult for me for a while was figuring out a placement for all of the buttons that were changed in a way, to not make them feel so different or so similar to each other, since some of the buttons did get a change, and like that placement seemed a bit weird. So I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but you know, back in the day, Goring used to be like a dot, and it would actually combo off of Riot, right? And then I had Royal Authority essentially here because that was the second combo that happened off of Riot Blade. And then of course it would combo Royal Authority into Atonement, which is where I used to have the button here, which was it was such a weird place, but like it made sense. And of course, like with Holy Spirit not really comboing directly off of like the Royal Authority combo as well, and just being used as like a continuation of Rekuskat, I usually just had the buttons there together. But of course, Bulwark, we didn't have Bulwark back then, right? So Bulwark actually used to be not on it was back in like in the Heavens Ward days, I would say, but then they got rid of it, of course. And so I actually had Shield Lob here. So this is like kind of a TLDR of what my old hotbar genuinely looked like for Paladin before the rework. But once I realized that they made Goring Blade like a 60-second cooldown attack, I was like, oh, that feels similar to Sonic Break. Okay. And then Holy Spirit, like, you know, when I'm doing a raid, I open with Holy Spirit. And even during certain portions of my raiding, I need to use that move for certain moments of the attacks that kind of come into place with like Royal Authority and Atonement and that kind of stuff too. So of course, that being said, I realized that Holy Spirit was an attack I had to use quite frequently, and I just didn't have a place for it at the time, at least. So I just kind of left it literally right there for like 30 seconds. But then I realized that Royal Authority was needed to use after Riot Blade, so this became the 1-2-3 combo, which I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then of course I realized that you know, once I did my combo with Paladin, I was like, oh look, both Holy Circle and Holy Spirit activate from like either Royal Authority or Prominence. So then I was like, what do I do with that move, right? And that's when I had like the realization that, oh no, I have to like move Shield Lob and put it somewhere, because if I'm in a dungeon, I can't use Holy Spirit if it's like a pre Holy Spirit dungeon. What is it, like 50 or 60, 64? Yeah. So any dungeon that's like pre 61, I can't use Holy Spirit. So I had to use Shield Lob. And I'm personally the kind of person who likes to have all my abilities at least in one place, unless the ability is like completely just not necessary. And dare I say that Holy Spirit, of course, is more necessary than Shield Lob. Like I'll never use Shield Lob during a raid experience, obviously, like never. But I also needed to put it somewhere close by in case I did use it for older content. So you know, that with that occurring, I put Holy Spirit here. But then of course I realized that I can't leave Atonement there, because I didn't want to leave Shield Lob there, and we had Bulwark still. So I was like, okay, well then maybe I'll do that. But then I started realizing that this started to get more comfortable with the times, and then I realized that eventually I just had everything perfectly placed, and then this was the hotbar, right? So obviously there's a lot of similarities to how I have it set for Gunbreaker, which I really enjoy, like I said. So of course, starting off the combo and the rotation, all that kind of stuff too, right? Like it was really easy to just start, you know, pressing buttons similar to each other And then before I knew it, right, I just had everything in a place that just made sense to me. And I really, really like that. The biggest difference, of course, is that I have Gnashing Fang up here, but up here I have a whole bunch of cooldowns that I need to use that are mitigation. So literally this whole second hotbar is a mitigation hotbar, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have any reason to come up here to do like an attack that does damage. Not anymore, at least. Because I knew that playing Paladin in dungeons and doing AoEs with it was weirdly uncomfortable because, of course, like, you know, you didn't combo Total Eclipse and Prominence into Holy Circle. Like, that wasn't a combo, right? It wasn't like a thing that they did. You only just spammed Holy Circle the same way you would spam Holy Spirit, and that's why I had it up there by itself, because I didn't have to combo with any buttons. So like, I would just use Holy Circle, pulling an entire dungeon, and then just using all my mitigation during that part, and that was it. And it was nice, and I loved that. And now that it combos with Prominence, or even, like, you know, with Royal Authority too, if you want to get technical, but having it, all my AoEs now in one spot, it just feels so nice. And having all my mitigation in one spot as well even feels nicer from there. So I actually really enjoyed that. And then, of course, you know, I know people have probably thought about the comparison of Gunbreaker to Paladin and see a lot of like similarities, and I won't deny it, of course, because, you know, not even just looking at the main you know, abilities that Paladin has alone. Like I said, like up here I have all of my abilities that are in the same place in terms of like the potion, interject, arms, reprisal, Vulcan Shirk, and the HP recovery attack, right? And even like my tank stance, like they're all in the same place. So this never really changes outside of like the one ability that we have, the ability that, like, the L2 down button. And then up here, of course, like Rampart's the same. You know, it's funny because I feel like I should, on my Gunbreaker, either put Corundum where Holy Sheltron is, because those buttons kind of sort of match each other, being 25 seconds, like, sorta, or I take Holy Sheltron and put it over here where Expiation is. But then I have this random move up here that does damage, and the placement for this to be here just wouldn't make sense. So I actually really prefer to just leave that as it is, pretty much. So this is the Paladin hotbar, and like I said, it feels very comfortable because when you're doing your burst, essentially you're doing everything on this side, and then when you have your like downtime, sort of, then you have everything on this side. The only real exception is that you have Circle of Scorn on this side, and I feel like you can replace that. Like, if you wanted to, you can totally replace it with like your invuln. But the thing is, like, I have my invuln in the same spot for all my classes, but, you know, in the theoretical perspective, you can totally just kind of, you know, if you were doing your attacks, I'm actually gonna try this out. But if I wanted to, right, I literally will stand on this hotbar the whole time, and the comfort board is really, really nice, right? So you totally have that option. But because I have my invuln in the same spot as all my other tanks as invulns, I'm not gonna move it. So I mean, it's also really easy to switch here real quick and grab Circle, come back here for Expiation, and then just keep on using the blades, right? So that comfort still exists the way that it does. And then, of course, with Atonement, right, because of, I used to have Atonement where Holy Circle is now, that was kind of the hardest part for me playing Paladin, was being able to move at the same time of needing to use Atonements, since the Atonements were a requirement in the downtime portion, and even during the opener and the rotation too. Like, you use Atonement like a lot during the pre-rework. I feel like now, I mean, I want to say you use it more often, but it's fixated in a more rigid spot during your rotation. Like, you only use it, you know, during downtime, like after the Royal Authority, and you only use it during the burst window after the second Holy Spirit, right? So I only use this move, I would say, what is it, like, it's 9 times every 60 seconds, something like that, I think, maybe. And I feel like you use it a little less often during your actually, no, I'm not. That's actually not true. I feel like, because you used to do Goring Blade as like a dot, and then you would do Royal Authority, and then Atonement, and then reapply the Goring Dot, and that was the rigidity of that rotation. With Paladin, it's a little bit more fluid now. That's actually more correct now that I think about it, yeah. But you kind of use Atonement more as a filler ability outside of everything else that you use as Paladin. But back then, you always had to use it in a certain order. So it was always placed in the same spot regardless for Paladin, right? Now it's not like that anymore. But you still have to use it though. But, you know, it's just a difference between the two Paladin classes. But that being said, though, I still really like it. I think my favorite part about being able to play Paladin now is that it just has like that burst window, and this hotbar placement really lets me just go to town with all my abilities. Because I think honestly, I spend the most time on this side of the hotbar compared to like Gunbreaker. Whereas Gunbreaker, I spend most of my time here, and actually I spend my time in different places. Like I spend my time usually holding R2 and then pressing my face buttons, but also on the second hotbar doing the same thing, of course. I think I probably spend like 60 seconds or, you know, sort of that amount of time frame on this side doing like my buff and my Sonic, and I do blasting twice every minute and all that other stuff too. But because with Paladin I spend so much time on this part alone, it's really easy to just press all my buttons in this one spot and not have to worry about bouncing around with my hotbars and kind of going crazy, unless that's to mitigate and whatnot. But I don't really think that I've even encountered that issue ever since the rework came in, and I think I've always really enjoyed that, because old Paladin I used to bounce around quite a bit, and like it was bad because, like I said, I had atonement here and I had to, there was no other place to put it, because, you know, I had to put goring somewhere because it was an active GCD, even though I used it, you know, only every other like 18 seconds or whatever the timer was for the buff. But like it didn't really matter to me. I didn't really like having it not in a place where I didn't press buttons, and now I have everything in a place where I can comfortably like press a button and it just works for me perfectly. So this is my Paladin hotbar, and you know, I like it a lot. And again, I think like looking into the next expansion, I have no idea what they could possibly do to the class to give any further indication of ability placement and whatnot. I don't have a clue. If I had to really think about it, I feel like with level 100 coming up as confirmed, any ability that's like a pre-90 visual ability, it'd be cool to see that get like a visual upgrade and even have some kind of like I don't know, like different sense of effect with it. So, you know, for example, Royal Authority is a buff from Rage of Halone. It'd be kind of cool to see if like Riot Blade or Fast Blade get like that visual update, right? And just has like some small tiny like thing that kind of adds to it. So if you think about it, you know, like with Brutal Shell for Gunbreaker, right, they get like a tiny little shield that they use whenever they use that move. It would be nice to have Riot Blade essentially have like a little cure, for example. But I don't want to make it sound like it's gonna seem like another version of Gunbreaker, and then it's weird, because I wouldn't like that too much. But if there were gonna upgrade some kind of ability, I feel like Riot Blade and Fast Blade combo might be like the ticket in, or even like Atonement. Atonement would be cool to upgrade, but we only got that ability recently during Shadowbringers, so I don't feel like they're gonna touch that ability. But I don't know. I don't have a clue actually. I would love to see what they actually end up working towards for level 100, because, you know, I feel like they can't add any more Confiteor and Blades of anything for that matter, because there's what, 4? If they add another one, I feel like that's just going to be so like so much. But I don't know, we'll see. So there you go. Hopefully this hotbar for Paladin kind of gives you like a decent example of where to place buttons, and add some of that comfort to the class as well, because like I said, I feel like once you have your hotbar set up for your class that you're playing, then it will make the experience a little bit easier in terms of being able to run content, whether it's a dungeon or a trial or a raid, or an ultimate, for that, you know, that too, that counts, of course. And yeah, I like to think that this will work out really well for anybody who's looking for an example of hotbars for Paladin. So there you go.